Dios está aquí, tan cierto como el aire respiro, tan cierto como en la mañana se levanta el sol, tan cierto como yo le canto el pueblo aquí. Dios está aquí, tan cierto como el aire que respiro, tan cierto como en la mañana se levanta el sol, tan cierto como yo le canto el pueblo aquí. All right, y'all remember this song, hermanos? Y'all gonna have to stand up for this one. So, because it's a fast moving one, we are teaching Madonna these songs, so if we make mistakes, that's fine. We're gonna keep learning it. Si en verdad eres salvo, di amén. Si en verdad eres salvo, di amén. Si en verdad eres salvo, por tu vida, si en verdad eres salvo, di amén. Si en verdad eres salvo, di amén. Si en verdad eres salvo, di amén. Si en verdad eres salvo, testifica con tu vida. Si en verdad eres salvo, di amén. Da la mano a tu hermano, da la mano. Da la mano a tu hermano, da la mano. Dale una bienvenida, un Dios te bendiga. Da la mano a tu hermano, da la mano. Da la mano a tu hermano, da la mano. Da la mano a tu hermano, da la mano. Dale una bienvenida, dale un Dios que bendiga. Da la mano a tu hermano, da la mano. Dame la mano, dame la mano, dame la mano, y mi hermano será. Dame la mano, dame la mano, dame la mano, y mi hermano será. Cada día con Cristo me llena de perfecto amor. Cada día con Cristo te amo más y más. Me salva y guarda y sé que pronto volverá. Vivir con Cristo, más dulce cada día será. Vivir con Cristo, más dulce cada día será. Amen. The words on my screen up there, really small. All right, open the eyes of my heart. Hermano Betán, going to guide us from this one. Are you happy, hermanos? Did God bless you this week? I know like that rain, hermanos. Wow.
Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you.
Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, that we can come before you and that you have a plan for each one of us, that you have greatness for us. And Father, we just thank you so much for just loving us the way that we are, Lord, and we just pray that you would just open our hearts and open our minds up to you this morning. In your holy name we pray. Amen. All right, now you may. This morning, first of all, I want to welcome everyone to Cabarrio this morning, and want to say just welcome, glad you're here in person, or that you're online in one of our ways. Right now, we're Facebook and on YouTube right now. So, but this morning we're going to be talking about a story that is familiar to most of us. If you've heard any of your Bible stories, probably you've heard of David and Goliath, the story of David and Goliath. You know, if you ask anybody, pretty much they'll tell you, well, it was about this little boy or young man who went up and he killed this giant. He killed this enemy, this Philistine. But you know, there's more to that story, and I think if you pick out the little pieces of David and Goliath, that I think no matter what stage of life you're in, or how your day is going, what's going on in your life right now, I think that you can get a good lesson from David and Goliath. And this is found in 1 Samuel chapter 17. And in 1 Samuel 17, beginning with verse 1, it says, Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at Soko in Judah. They pitched camp at Ephes Damim, between Soko and Azekah. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them. A champion named Goliath, who was from God, came out of the Philistine camp. He was over 9 feet tall. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went ahead of him. Goliath stood and shouted at the ranks of Israel, Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. Then the Philistines said, This day I defy the ranks of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other. On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. Now David was the son of an Ephrathite named Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judah. Jesse had 8 sons, and in Saul's time he was old and well advanced in years. Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed Saul to the war. The firstborn was Elah, the second Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. The 3 oldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's sheep at Bethlehem. For 40 days the Philistine came forward every morning, and every evening it took his stand. Now Jesse said to his son David, Take this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are and bring back some assurance from them. They are with Saul and all the men of Israel in the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. Early in the morning, David left the flock with a shepherd, loaded up and set out as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines, facing each other. David left his things with the keeper of supplies, ran to the battle lines, and greeted his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance, and David heard it. When the Israelites saw the man, they all ran from him in great fear. Now the Israelites had been saying, "Do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The man will give great wealth to the king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give him his daughter in marriage and will exempt his father's family from taxes in Israel." David asked the men standing there, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" They repeated to him what they had been saying and told him, "This is what will be done for the man who kills him." When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, "Why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the desert? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle." "Now what have I done?" said David. "Can I even speak?" Then he turned away to someone else He turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter, but the men answered him as before. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You were not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a boy, and he's been a fighting man from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by the hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around, but he was not used to them. "I cannot go in these," he said to Saul, "because I am not used to them." So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand approached the Philistine. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was only a boy, ruddy and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said. "I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. Today I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all to you, and he will give all of you into our hands. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and he struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without his sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the scabbard. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of God and to the gates of Ekron. We see here that David comes upon the army of Israel there, the army that Saul is leading, and he's being told to go there by his father. And his father tells him, says, well, go out there and check on your brothers, take them some, some food, some supplies. And we see David, he goes out to where the battle, I guess, the potential battle is going to be. And this morning I wanted us to know that when you think of David, you need to be thinking about being ready. And when I say be ready, I mean be ready for the unexpected. Be ready for the things that maybe you think are so monotonous and so routine to be great to God. Be ready for those things that God calls you to do that you may think, well, that's just too simple and that's too easy. And God is saying, go do it anyway. Be ready to use your life experience. Be ready to use those things in your life that God has put there. You haven't lived this life and had any experiences in your life that God cannot use. Most importantly, be ready to live the name of your God. Be ready to live knowing that your God, the one and only God, the Creator, is your power and your strength. We see here that David, he goes out to visit his brothers and to visit the troops, and I don't think he was expecting that day to go out and be standing in front of Goliath. I really don't think he woke up that morning and said, I think I'm just going to go out and stand up in front of this 9-foot guy and see what I can do. Most mornings when you wake up, you're not truly thinking about the opportunities that God has for you. You may think, oh yeah, God's going to use me today, but how is he going to use you? How are you going to let him use you? Because it says there that, that David went out and he left all his supplies back behind the enemy, behind the line of the battle. And then he went out to the battle line and I think even then he wasn't expected to do anything. And he goes out and he starts seeing what the problem is, and it says this several times. The problem is the fact that each one of these soldiers, they're not dedicated to God. Each one of these Israelite soldiers, they're not thinking that I am a subject of God's army. They're thinking I'm a subject of Saul's army. And they're thinking, well, this 9-foot guy that comes out for 40 days and has been taunting us, well, he's more powerful than us. He has more strength than us. If they were thinking about the fact that they were subjects of the one and only God, they would know that their God has more strength than Goliath. That he has more strength than any God that Goliath might be worshiping. This morning we had read in Joshua 24, verse 15. It says, "But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your forefathers served beyond the river or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." Every morning when you wake up, you need to read that. You need to make that decision. You need to make that decision that you are going to serve the one and only, the Almighty, the sovereign God. And if you remember that, your day is going to be a different day. Choosing the one that you're going to serve. You think you're serving this world, you think you're serving your job, you think you're serving your family, and you're not thinking about serving God, then you're headed in the wrong direction. We see here that David was going out to do something that probably he had done several times over the years. He's going out to visit the military, the army there of Israel, going out to check on his brother so that he could send a report back to his dad. And he gets out there, and he sees that, well, things aren't going the way that they should be going. He was doing some little routine, monotonous chore. You see the way that his brother treated him. It's like, you're just some little kid, get out of here. Some of the small things, the monotonous, the routine things that you do in your life that maybe other people tell you, oh, that doesn't matter. If God has put that in your heart, if God is giving you that in your heart, it matters. If God has led you somewhere, you will see success. We see in Jeremiah 29, and we see here that this is the letter that was sent from Jeremiah to some of the exiles. And in Jeremiah 29, verse 10, it says, "This is what the Lord says: when 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will come to you and fulfill my gracious promise to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call upon me and come and seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I have banished you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back to the place from which I carried you into exile. So we see here that God is telling them, I've sent you into exile. I've sent you to Babylon, but I don't mean for you to give up. And he's telling them, he said, go and do all the things that we consider to be normal, everyday life. All of the little routine tasks that we consider to be, oh, well, these are just routine tasks. God doesn't really care about this. You can't be farther from the truth. If God is telling Jeremiah to tell these exiles to continue to live their life, to continue to accept his prosperity through another nation, if God cares about everything that you do in your life. So as we see here in 1 Samuel that David has gone out and, I kind of see him standing there, and the guys are watching this Philistine taunt them, and I kind of see David kind of sitting there scratching his head going, why are they letting this guy do this? Do they not know who they serve? And David says several times of the fact that they are serving the army of God. Some of those small things that we see in our lives, God sees them on a different scale. He has a different set of weights for you. He has emphasis on you. He loves you. So we see David, he goes to Saul. Saul calls him, and he goes and he tells Saul, I'll go do it. That's what God's looking for. Every morning, we said that in Joshua 24:15, it says, I choose to serve God. That's what God is looking for every single morning. He is looking for somebody that tells him, I'll go do what you want to do. I'll do that. Sometimes God is looking for people that will do that before they even know what God is asking. So many times in our life, we ask, God, what do you want from me? No, that's too hard. I can't do that. But I'll do anything else. Well, yeah. No, I can't do that. That's too much. And yet, we want to say that we serve our God. See here that David tells Saul, I'll go. I'll go out there. Because that Philistine doesn't know my God. That Philistine doesn't know who my God is. Saul tells him, says, well, you can't go. You're a young boy. This Philistine, he's been a warrior all of his life. David starts telling him his life experience. He starts telling him, I've defended his sheep. I've killed a lion. I've killed a bear. And God has delivered me in each one of those times. You know, we've been talking, and I've mentioned several times about the fact that in order to truly know God, you have to understand, and you have to be able to accept the experiences that He's put in your life, the life experience that He's put in your life, and give Him credit for each experience of saying, when you led me through this, Lord, you've taken me out of the hand of that enemy that was there. So I know tomorrow when there's another enemy there, you will put victory in my hand. And that's what David is telling Saul that day. He was telling him, if God gave me victory all those other days, God will give me victory today. But you have to use your life experiences. God is constantly preparing you. Use what He's given you. He's given you knowledge. He's given you protection. He, being the unchanging, the constant God that He is going to continue to do that for you today. God has given you life experience. But you also have to know that you have to live the way God has made you. And I say that because you would think that David walks in, he's probably got his fur jacket on, or whatever the shepherds were wearing at that time, maybe a robe, and you would think that by Saul trying to arm him with his armor, that would be a good thing. But it wasn't. Because by putting on Saul's armor, he was no longer David. He was a small Saul. And we have to remember, as we go out against our enemies in this world, God has made us the way that we are. God has protected us the way that we are. And God will protect us the way that we are. And we see here that David goes out to meet Goliath. It says there in 1 Samuel 17:41, it says, meanwhile the Philistine with his shield bearer in front of him kept coming closer to David. He looked at David over and over and saw that he was only a boy, ruddy and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Come here, he said. I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. And David said to the Philistine, you come against me with the sword and the spear and the javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the army of Israel, whom you have defied. We need to be praying the power of God. We need to be praying the strength of God and not worrying about all this other stuff that's out here. We need to be praying to the one and only God, the power of God, and have us realize the power of that God, the power of that protection, the power of that assault of our God. We have so many people in this world that are afraid of everything right now. And it's because we're not focused. And it's easy for us to take our eyes off of God. It's easy. But we have to get our eyes back on God. We focus on our politics, if we focus on our, just if we focus on a virus, if we focus on whatever is you have fear right now, then you're not focused on God. Be focused on God. We see here that David, who he walks out to meet Goliath. What does he have in his hand? Some kind of little slingshot and some stones in his hand. I promise you, God will give you the shot placement when you are up against your enemy. God will put your stone against your enemy. But you have to be focused on God. This morning, if you can't say that I'm focused on God, if you don't know the living God, if you haven't accepted Christ as your personal Savior, this morning is that day. This altar is opened up. This altar is for you this morning. If you can't stand in front of your enemy and say, I've got a God that's more powerful than you, then it's the time for you to meet that God. As the music plays, just ask Jesus to come into your heart. Ask Jesus to take over your life.
All to Jesus I surrender all. Him I freely give. I will ever love God's presence every day. I surrender all. I surrender all to thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all to Jesus. I surrender, Savior, holy God. Let me feel thy Holy Spirit. Show that thou art God. I surrender all. I surrender all to thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all to Jesus. I surrender.
You would like to rededicate your soul in this time of your life to serving Jesus, serving God. The altar is open. You are watching us Wherever you are watching this, if you have a decision, you have a prayer request, send us a message. Email us at We'll pray for you. Also, sing verse one more time. If you want prayer, just raise your hand at this time. If you're here, just raise your hand and we'll pray for you. Amen.
All to Jesus I surrender all. In my freedom, I will ever love and trust Him. Presence save me. I surrender all. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all.
David had to be ready for everything. He had to be ready to say, I will go. He had to be ready to face an enemy that didn't look like on the outside, on the physical side of it, that he could win against. But the spiritual side of that, you can win. God will deliver your enemy over in your hands. He will give you the contentment, He will give you the peace to be able to live through these times, whatever's going on in your life right now. We're going to play one more verse. And just ask God to just give you that peace, give you that rest.
All to Jesus I surrender, I give myself to Thee. Fill me with Thy love and power, let Thy blessings fall on me. I surrender all. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all. I surrender all. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all.
Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for this day that you've given us. We thank you for this opportunity to be here in your word. And Father, I thank you that we can fellowship together, knowing the protection that you have for us, knowing the plans that you have for us, the prosperity and the strength that you have for us. Father, I pray that each person would not look at the physical portion of their life, but they would look at how strong your spirit is in them. And if they need a boost with your spirit, that they would just accept you. Father, I pray that you be with each person here, that they would just hold on to you as they go back out into the world. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. No turning back. With me, I still will follow. Though none go with me, I still will follow. Though none go with me, I still will follow. No turning back, no turning back. Seguido, seguirá Cristo. He decidido seguir a Cristo. Decidido seguir a Cristo. No vuelvo atrás. No vuelvo atrás. Hermanos, estamos despedidos.